If you say that one more time, I'm going to choke the out of you when I see you.
Hey, Tony, instead of releasing your edit, put the whole video out. I don't have it, or I would myself. You know what happened, and you're trying to manipulate the media.
It was Cat, because he told me. He said they're going to come for you. And I was like, Cat, come on, Cat. I mean, I just, you know.
What if I told you that one of the most respected voices in modern sports media, someone fans trusted, admired, and maybe even idolized, could be hiding something terrifying?
And he wasn't at a strip club, but his text messages have been revealed, and it's quite embarrassing for ESPN. So he used to be on First Take, and now they are putting that on ice.
They're out there releasing pages and pages of text messages. They're out there releasing audio. It looks to me like both sides are engaged in trying to litigate this in the media before litigating it in a court of law.
Shannon Sharpe, the former NFL star turned media powerhouse, has always been loud, opinionated, and larger than life. But now he's being compared to Diddy. Yes, that Diddy. The same Diddy who's been caught in a media storm of abuse allegations, NDAs, and federal raids. And this isn't just social media trolling. This is coming from leaked texts, inside sources, and a rapidly growing chorus of whispers that say Shannon may not be the man we all thought he was. So let's talk about it. Because if you click this video because of the title, you already know something big is going down. Now let me break down exactly what's being said and why this could destroy everything Shannon Sharpe built. What if everything you thought you knew about Shannon Sharpe was just a polished public image? Because right now, what started as a quiet leak online has exploded into something much darker and much harder to ignore. The conversation began, innocently enough, buried deep in a fan forum where people casually discussed celebrity gossip. An anonymous account claiming to have previously worked with Sharpe posted a cryptic message, suggesting that behind the scenes, he wasn't just a boisterous TV personality, but someone who allegedly operated with control, pressure, and fear. No names were mentioned, no hard evidence dropped, just whispers. But even whispers can be powerful in today's digital age. Within 48 hours, that post was being screenshotted, shared on Twitter or X, and dissected across Reddit threads. People started digging, and they found something chilling: an alleged batch of private DMs. These messages, none officially confirmed but already viral, suggested Shannon might have been using his influence to manipulate people personally and professionally. The tone of the leaked DMs wasn't explosive in an obvious way, but if real, they painted a picture of someone who thrives on psychological leverage. There were subtle threats, references to favors owed, and an odd insistence on silence. Phrases like, "You know better than to cross me," and "I've helped your career too much for you to act brand new." Screenshots claim to show this being said to younger professionals, even a few women in entertainment circles. The timing couldn't have been worse. Just as the public was becoming more aware and more reactive to the abuses of power in industries like music and sports, here was a beloved media figure suddenly being talked about in the same breath as Sean Diddy Combs. This feels like a Diddy situation. One Twitter user wrote, "At first that sounded like a wild comparison, but it caught on. Diddy, after all, had also been accused of maintaining a carefully curated public persona while privately engaging in disturbing behavior." Could Sharpe be doing the same? What made things even more explosive was how quickly the label stuck. Diddy 2.0 was now trending across social media. It wasn't just a viral jab, it was a declaration. The implication was clear. Shannon wasn't just another problematic celebrity. He was being positioned as the next major figure to fall. And that scared people. His fans were confused, his critics were energized, and the media? They didn't know what to do with it yet. No mainstream outlet wanted to be the first to dive in, but the internet already had. This wasn't just about a few spicy texts. This was about a shift in perception. Once that crack forms in a public figure's armor, especially someone as visible and opinionated as Shannon Sharpe, everything they've ever said or done gets put under a microscope. The same audience that once cheered him on was now questioning if they ever really knew the man behind the mic. Because if even a fraction of this turns out to be true, then Shannon Sharpe might not just be in trouble. He might be done. Once the name Diddy 2.0 started circulating, things took a turn from strange to dangerous for Shannon Sharpe. In the court of public opinion, perception is everything. And once that label stuck, it began to reshape how people looked at his entire career. Let's be honest, Sharpe has always had a big personality. Whether he was cracking jokes on Undisputed, flexing cigars and Hennessy memes, or engaging in on-air shouting matches, Shannon built a brand off being bold, unapologetic, and occasionally controversial. But that energy doesn't hit the same when people start questioning whether it's a performance or a warning sign. People started digging, and what they found only gave more weight to the nickname. First, users resurfaced past interviews where Shannon made offhand comments that seemed harmless at the time, but now read as deeply manipulative in hindsight. In one now viral clip, he laughs about getting people to do what he wants without saying a word. In another, he talks about knowing how to push buttons in just the right way to control outcomes. These moments, once seen as savvy veteran media strategy, suddenly felt like red flags. People weren't laughing anymore, they were concerned. The Diddy 2.0 nickname wasn't just about general bad behavior, it was about pattern recognition. The public started connecting dots. Both men are charismatic black moguls who've mastered media. Both have maintained tight control over their narratives for years. And now, both are facing serious accusations from behind the scenes. Accusations that involve alleged emotional abuse, NDAs, and a hidden culture of silence. And let's not pretend the timing didn't help fuel the comparison. Diddy's recent scandals, complete with lawsuits, raids, and federal attention, primed audiences to scrutinize similar personalities with newfound skepticism. So when Shannon's name began trending for reasons other than his sports takes, people weren't inclined to give him the benefit of the doubt. And here's where it gets even messier. Unlike Diddy, Shannon built his empire after sports, through talking, debating, and, ironically, holding others accountable. His whole brand is built on calling people out. So to now have the tables turn, to be the one under the microscope, feels like poetic justice to some and devastating hypocrisy to others. Especially when you consider that some of the alleged victims behind the leak are claiming Sharpe used that same media power as a shield, daring anyone to question him because they'd be going up against a well-connected, well-liked media figure. More damningly, a few former colleagues began liking tweets about the allegations. And in today's digital landscape, that means something. When you've worked with someone closely and then publicly show signs of support for their critics, people notice. Even silence became suspicious. Why weren't his closest friends in the industry defending him? Why did a few go completely dark after the leak dropped? The conspiracy theories were practically writing themselves, and the Diddy 2.0 comparison became more than just internet noise. It became a rallying point for people to finally question whether Shannon Sharpe's likability was just a mask. The danger of a label like Diddy 2.0 isn't just in its shock factor, it's in the way it reframes everything. Suddenly, every joke he's made about running things, every time he bragged about knowing how to control a room, isn't charming anymore. It's chilling. And the worst part? The more people look into it, the more they find. Old stories, strange interactions, vague statements from past coworkers, they're all being pulled into the vortex, all because one viral name gave people a framework for suspicion. This isn't just a PR crisis, it's a full-blown identity unraveling in real time. And once a name like that sticks, it's almost impossible to peel off. Shannon Sharpe may not have intended to be compared to Diddy, but the internet made that decision for him. And now, that comparison is haunting every corner of his career. Once the alleged DMs started surfacing, everything shifted. It was no longer just online gossip or Reddit speculation. This time, there were receipts. Screenshots began circulating on social media, supposedly pulled from private conversations between Shannon Sharpe and multiple individuals, some of whom were reportedly younger professionals trying to break into media or sports entertainment. These messages weren't outright incriminating in a criminal sense, at least not yet, but they were disturbing. They hinted at power imbalances, manipulation, and a recurring theme of coercive behavior masked as mentorship. In one set of screenshots, Shannon allegedly berates a younger female broadcaster for not attending one of his off-camera events, accusing her of being ungrateful after all I've done for you. Another shows him insisting someone remember who gave you your first shot. On their own, these statements might seem like the inflated ego of a celebrity, but placed within the growing context of controlling behavior, they began to look like something much darker: psychological control. The tone of the messages varied. Some were passive-aggressive, others eerily calm but assertive. But they all had one thing in common. Shannon allegedly spoke with the confidence of someone who believed he couldn't be touched. One screenshot even ends with, "I don't do threats, I do reminders." That line alone sent Twitter into a frenzy. Is this a movie villain or a real person? One user wrote. Others compared his messaging style to the kind of tactics often exposed in long-term abuse scandals. Build them up, make them dependent, then quietly make it clear that loyalty is no longer optional. People began asking whether Shannon had a pattern of getting close to up-and-coming talent, offering mentorship, opportunities, and exposure, but then leveraging those relationships for personal gain, or worse, control. This isn't just about clout or ego. These types of relationships, if the allegations are true, are built to silence. Because when someone feels like they owe their entire career to you, they're far less likely to speak out. The most damning part? The number of people who said they were not surprised. That phrase kept popping up, even from those who never interacted with Shannon directly. Apparently, the energy he exuded behind the scenes didn't always match the lovable on-screen uncle persona fans adored. Some claimed they had heard stories before, but never thought they'd be proven. Others said they had seen enough, and quietly unfollowed or disengaged. It's not just about what was said in the messages, it's about what wasn't. The implications, the pressure, the silence that followed when those messages allegedly went unanswered. Shannon, in those texts, appears to be someone who doesn't like being ignored, and who reminds people of his status whenever he feels dismissed. If real, the messages point to a deeply toxic dynamic that can't be waved off as just tough love or old-school guidance. And remember, these are just the leaks. Who knows what's still under wraps? If a few screenshots could cause this much damage, imagine what could happen if more people come forward with full email threads, phone recordings, or worse. This isn't about cancel culture anymore. It's about power, accountability, and whether Shannon Sharpe's empire was built on silence. Every scandal has a tipping point. And for Shannon Sharpe, that moment may have arrived when a former insider decided to break the silence. According to several independent accounts, an individual who once worked directly with Shannon, allegedly in a behind-the-scenes production or PR capacity, came forward with claims that confirmed everyone's worst fears. The insider, who chose to remain anonymous for now, described what they called a culture of intimidation, loyalty tests, and whispered warnings. According to this source, Shannon allegedly had a habit of creating a team environment that blurred the lines between professional loyalty and personal servitude. Interns and assistants were expected to be on call far beyond work hours, and not just for tasks related to his shows or business ventures. They were reportedly pressured into attending events, participating in dinners, and engaging in off-the-record bonding experiences. That sometimes veered into inappropriate territory. It was the kind of environment where saying no wasn't forbidden, but doing so came with consequences. The insider also described emotional manipulation, saying Shannon would reward extreme loyalty with praise, gifts, or opportunities, but immediately cut off those who pushed back or distanced themselves. It was all about control, they reportedly said. The people around him either worshipped him or disappeared. That chilling description mirrors what's been said about Diddy's inner circle, and it's part of why the Diddy 2.0 label won't go away. This whistleblower also claimed that NDAs were casually brought up during employment conversations. Not official legal contracts, just constant verbal reminders that what happens around Shannon stays with Shannon. That line was supposedly repeated like a mantra, and while this doesn't prove anything illegal, it raises disturbing questions about what kind of power dynamics were at play, and whether the people around him truly felt safe. Worse still, the insider hinted that there may be others who want to speak out but are afraid. Some fear retaliation, while others simply feel like they can't afford to go against someone as powerful and connected as Sharpe. He's got too many friends in the business, they said. If you cross him, you might never work in this town again. This statement sparked another wave of social media backlash. Now, people weren't just reacting to leaked DMs or vague accusations. They were hearing from someone who had been there. And while the source hasn't gone on camera yet, the credibility they seem to hold, backed by timelines and consistent details, was enough to add gasoline to the fire. We've seen this playbook before. When one person speaks out, others often follow. And with Shannon still silent, people are asking, how many more insiders are out there, waiting for the right moment to tell their truth? In Hollywood, silence is often louder than a public statement. And over the last few days, Shannon Sharpe's inner circle has gone curiously quiet. Several celebrities who were once vocal supporters of him, posting pictures, laughing on camera, sharing podcast episodes, have suddenly gone radio silent. Some deleted posts, others unfollowed him entirely. And the fans noticed, quickly. Names weren't dropped directly, but internet sleuths did the work. A few major sports and entertainment figures quietly scrubbed their timelines of old photos with Shannon. A few even untagged themselves from collaborative content. The message wasn't shouted from rooftops, but it was clear. People were distancing themselves, fast, and that distancing didn't go unnoticed. One sharp-eyed fan pointed out that a certain A-list athlete removed a post of them and Shannon hanging out at a private dinner, within hours of the allegations trending. Coincidence? Maybe. But when 3 more celebrities followed suit, it looked a lot more intentional. Even on air, the vibe shifted. Some of Shannon's co-hosts and peers didn't defend him. They didn't mention him at all. Usually in a media storm, close colleagues offer support or at least acknowledgement. But here, silence. That eerie kind of silence that makes people wonder, what do they know that we don't? It's also worth noting that some of these distancing moves reportedly happened before the DMs even went public. That suggests something. The people closest to Shannon may have known something was coming, and instead of standing by him, they quietly backed away, trying to avoid the splash zone of a scandal that now looks like it's only beginning. We've seen this behavior before with other public figures who fell from grace. When the people who once laughed with you, traveled with you, and endorsed your every move start acting like you don't exist, that's when the tide has really turned. Social media platforms exploded the moment Shannon Sharpe's name got tied to Diddy 2.0. Within hours, hashtags like Shannon Sharpe exposed, Diddy 2.0, and Sharpe secrets started trending across X, TikTok, and Instagram. But the reaction wasn't one note. It was chaotic, polarized, and incredibly revealing. On one hand, there were die-hard fans defending him, claiming it was all fabricated, exaggerated, or even a targeted takedown. On the other, there was a tidal wave of people who felt validated. People who said they'd always gotten a weird vibe from Shannon, but never had proof. Now, with leaked messages and alleged insider testimony, they finally felt like the mask had dropped. But what really made things spiral was the combination of confusion and familiarity. Many commenters weren't just surprised, they were heartbroken. Shannon Sharpe wasn't some niche celebrity. He was a household name in sports commentary, a former athlete turned cultural icon. People felt betrayed because they liked him. They followed his fitness journey, laughed at his memes, tuned in for his takes. This wasn't just a public figure getting dragged. It was someone millions trusted. And that made the suspicion cut deeper. Conspiracy theories naturally flooded in. Some users questioned whether Shannon had enemies in the industry who were now trying to bring him down. Others argued that this was a classic media sacrifice, where a beloved figure gets thrown under the bus to distract from even larger scandals. It didn't help that the media was slow to pick up the story, which made some believe there was a deliberate attempt to suppress it. If this was someone else, it'd be on CNN by now, one viral tweet read. That fueled the skepticism and the rage. Comment sections on Shannon's old posts became battlegrounds. Fans begged him to speak up, critics demanded accountability, and trolls just poured gasoline on the fire. The divide was sharp, but even more troubling was the emotional fatigue. This wasn't the first time fans watched someone they admired implode under allegations. And each time it happens, people become more jaded, more cynical. The emotional roller coaster of, I looked up to this person, to, I can't believe I didn't see it, is exhausting. And yet, amid all the chaos, there was one consensus. Something felt off. Whether it was the lack of a direct denial, the silence from his usual supporters, or the eerie parallels to Diddy, the public sensed this wasn't just gossip. It was the beginning of a reckoning. And in a post-Me Too world, people aren't as quick to dismiss patterns of alleged manipulation, especially when they've seen where those patterns can lead. If there's one thing the internet does well, it's dig. And Shannon Sharpe's past has now become the new focus of intense scrutiny. Every old interview, offhand comment, or forgotten controversy is being revisited through a completely different lens. Moments that once seemed harmless or even funny now come off as manipulative or tone-deaf. And the deeper people dig, the more they start to wonder, was the warning always there? Take, for example, his infamous interviews where he spoke about dominance, how he takes over a room, or how when I walk in, everyone knows I run this. Back then, fans laughed. They saw it as part of his confident charm. But now, those words sound eerily similar to the kinds of behavioral red flags exposed in other abuse cases. He wasn't just being assertive, he might have been revealing exactly how he maintained control in his private life. Then there's the 2010s incident that resurfaced, involving a civil dispute with a woman who claimed Sharpe had threatened her. At the time, the story barely made headlines and no charges were filed. Shannon denied everything, and the situation faded fast. But now, that story is being reposted with fresh eyes. Suddenly, the timeline doesn't look like an isolated incident. It looks like the possible beginning of a pattern. People are also highlighting old podcast moments where Shannon would brag about knowing who to keep close and cutting off people who aren't useful anymore. Again, these were once seen as motivational lines, but they now come off as strategic manipulation. The internet has a memory, and it's unforgiving. Every clip, every quote, every interaction is being recontextualized. It's the same effect we saw with other disgraced celebrities. When the allegations start stacking, everything from the past suddenly feels like foreshadowing, and the public starts to feel betrayed, not just by the person, but by themselves. How did I miss this becomes a common thought. And worse, how many others like him are still out there? What's striking in this whole unraveling is who isn't talking. While social media is on fire and alternative media channels are dissecting every angle, mainstream outlets have been curiously quiet. ESPN? Nothing. CNN? Radio silence. Even celebrity-focused platforms like TMZ have only issued short blurbs, if anything. And that silence is making people ask the obvious. Is someone protecting Shannon Sharpe? It's no secret that Sharpe has cultivated powerful relationships in media. From his years at Undisputed to his current ventures, he's been a constant presence in mainstream sports discourse. He's close with big networks, top producers, and executives who don't just respect him, they profit from him. So when serious allegations begin to surface and nobody in traditional media touches them, that's a red flag. Some speculate that Shannon's influence is making outlets hesitant. Maybe they don't want to be the first to go after someone so entrenched in the establishment. Or maybe there are legal threats behind the scenes. Either way, the optics are terrible. To the public, it looks like a cover-up. And when you combine media silence with growing online outrage, that silence starts to feel complicit. We've seen this before. Think about how long it took for stories about Diddy or even Weinstein to hit major networks. When people have money, power, and media access, bad stories get buried until they can't be anymore. And that tipping point is often social media. Because when the public decides they're not waiting for traditional news to break the story, they start breaking it themselves. And now, the pressure is mounting. Every hour that passes without a major outlet investigating the Shannon Sharpe allegations makes them look worse. It makes them look like they're picking and choosing who gets exposed. And it reinforces the public's growing distrust of traditional news media, because right now the silence is louder than the truth. Behind closed doors, it looks like panic is setting in. Multiple sources, including social media insiders and entertainment gossip pages, are reporting that Shannon Sharpe's PR and legal teams are in full-blown crisis mode. That means calls with lawyers, damage control strategies, and a sudden sweeping cleanup of his digital footprint. Comments on Instagram posts are being turned off. Old interviews are being edited or scrubbed. And allegedly, legal teams have begun reaching out to bloggers and small media channels to tread carefully. Some insiders claim that Shannon's team has issued informal cease and desist warnings to a few influencers who are discussing the leaked DMs. Whether those efforts will hold up legally is unclear, but one thing is certain: he's trying to stop the bleeding. And fast. There are also whispers that some of his upcoming brand deals are now on pause. At least one major sponsor is reportedly reevaluating their partnership. That's corporate code for, we're not sure he's worth the PR headache. And in a world where image is everything, that's a devastating blow. What's even more telling is the lack of a formal statement. Usually when someone faces this kind of firestorm, they respond, deny the allegations, announce an investigation, or at least put out a vague, "These claims are false" post. But from Shannon, nothing, just silence. And that silence is starting to look less like strategy and more like desperation. Because if he truly had nothing to hide, wouldn't he be shouting that from the rooftops? Instead, it feels like his entire operation is trying to hit pause, buy time, stop the momentum, and pray the internet moves on. But as we've seen time and time again, the internet doesn't forget. And if anything, it only digs harder when it senses fear. That's the question everyone is asking now. Is this the end of Shannon Sharpe as we know him? His brand, built on confidence, charisma, and cultural relevance, is now under attack from every angle. And once public trust breaks, it's nearly impossible to repair. Sure, some celebrities survive scandals, but most, they fade, they disappear. They get remembered not for what they achieved, but for how they fell. What makes this particularly devastating is how fast it all unraveled. Just weeks ago, Shannon was riding high. Popular podcasts, viral memes, influential interviews. Now, he's the center of a growing scandal that's forcing people to reconsider everything they thought they knew about him. And the longer he stays silent, the more power that scandal gains. We're not talking about a temporary hit to his reputation. We're talking about the potential dismantling of an entire media empire. his partnerships, his show deals, his brand endorsements. Everything hangs in the balance. Because once you're labeled as manipulative or abusive, especially in the post-Me Too era, people stop looking at you the same way. You become toxic. And networks don't like toxic. Even worse, if more victims come forward, or if someone decides to press formal legal action, then this doesn't just remain a reputational issue. It becomes a legal one. And once lawyers and courts get involved, careers don't just pause, they end. So, could this be it? Could this be the final chapter in Shannon Sharpe's rise and fall? It's too soon to say for sure, but if things keep unraveling at this rate, we might be watching the collapse of a public figure in real time. And if even half of what's being whispered turns out to be true, then Diddy 2.0 might be more than a nickname. It might be a prophecy.